Hi, everybody. Welcome to Star Wars Timeline. Today we have a wonderful podcast for you guys. We have Dante. Please reintroduce yourself to our new viewers. Tell us about your channel and what you do.
Hello, all viewers of Star Wars Timeline. My name is Dante, and I am a YouTuber on the Geekery with Dante D channel. We are a channel where we talk about primarily comic books. We usually say we talk about comic books and other geek stuff. Next to Marvel and DC, I think the second most spoken about topic on our channel is Star Wars, but we also delve into Game of Thrones and anything really that's considered geeky. We pretty much talk about it on the channel.
Awesome. And we started interacting, you and I, through just checking out each other's channels and like via comments and, things kind of like connected. And we really were interested in each other's thoughts and like try to understand where we're coming from and share differences as well in a friendly manner. Just before we begin our awesome topic, today we're talking about the High Republic. Quick disclaimer. To my knowledge, neither myself nor Dante are being sponsored by Lucasfilm or Disney. We're just simple men trying to make our way in the galaxy. If you guys think there are some Disney shills, please turn away now, because we're not. We're just like huge geeks and fans of Star Wars and other stuff. I also worked in a comic book shop for many years, so I have some knowledge there. But what we want to talk about today is High Republic. And before I hit you with the first question, just a very, very brief synopsis for some of our viewers who might be entirely new to this concept. So what is the High Republic? It's a new publishing campaign which was first spoken about. It was introduced in the February of 2020, and it was called Project Luminous, a new publishing multimedia event which spans across comic books, audiobooks, and of course young adult and adult novels. And eventually it was being called the High Republic. The plotline, the storyline in this series takes place roughly 300 years before the events of the films, just so you guys understand what's happening. And the first wave of books, we already got one adult book, one young reader book, and one children's book, along with some audiobooks, which all started coming out this January. And as part of this first wave, some books are about to come out this week. And I'm personally super excited. How about you, Dante?
I have my my copy of The Rising Storm by Cavan Scott on order. Actually, my family got it for me for Father's Day, and they gave me the picture on Father's Day morning, along with my copy of Light of the Jedi, which I read Light of the Jedi from my local library, but now I liked it so much that I'm going to have a copy of it. So
Nice.
really excited.
So let's get things rolling here. First question I have for you is, how did you get into Star Wars books?
You know what? Actually, I got into Star. Believe it or not, we actually spoke about it a little bit last week,
Right.
where my thoughts on the sequel trilogy.
Yes.
And I started getting into Star Wars books, believe it or not, when I was essentially displeased with what I was getting on the screen. Now, I always read Star Wars comics, but I never jumped into the novels because I was younger actually when most of the during the Bantam era.
Yeah.
I was younger, so the books were a little bit above my reading level at the time. But once I started seeing what was coming out from Lucasfilm with the sequel trilogy, I have to say I wasn't a big fan of it. So
Right.
I started trying to get my Star Wars fix in the reading world. But then there were also certain characters, for example, Darth Plagueis. It was just mentioned briefly in the sequel trilogy, in the prequel trilogy. But that whole concept of Darth Plagueis really, really interested me. It was only spoken about for maybe a few minutes, and then when I found out there was a book about it, I'm like, I have to read this book. And when I read the book, I got hooked on the Star Wars novels, and I really haven't stopped reading them since. This was about maybe 3 years ago.
I know you're a huge comic book fan. There's no secret you like all this kind of genres, but I have to ask, why do you like reading sci-fi and fantasy in general? What is it about it?
To be honest, I wouldn't actually consider myself a huge sci-fi fan. Star Wars, I know, is often considered to be sci-fi, but I find that it really kind of balances the sci-fi and fantasy genre really, really well. Because what interests me in Star Wars is not like the spaceships and the fact that it takes place in space. For me, it's actually the political intrigue and the Jedi. And the Jedi, to me, they really remind me of like kind of a space version of, you know, the Knights of the Round Table. I love the fantasy genre and you know, the whole genre of, you know, that takes place, you know, in medieval times. Usually it's, you know, medieval Europe that they choose as a setting. But for me, the Jedi are fantasy tropes, but they're in a futuristic type setting, and that is what really kind of attracted me to Star Wars. Star Wars is, I love it, but like other sci-fi franchises, I really am not into. Like, I'm not really into Star Trek, for example.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, you know, it's interesting that I think everybody acknowledges that Star Wars is pretty much a cross-genre story. It borrows from science fiction elements, it borrows from fantasy elements, and you know, the heroic motifs, classical mythology that you and I spoke about the last time. And what I want to lead us next is so both our audience understands where both you and I are coming from. And if you don't mind, I'll start to situate ourselves and give the fans a taste for what our taste in literature is. And I want to start off by mentioning a couple of absolute must-read books which kind of like shape my taste in books. And then if you could also pick it up. I personally would say one of the masters of short story form, short storytelling, is Robert E. Howard, the creator of the Conan series. And I spoke about it with my other guest, Josh from Star Wars on High, and I mentioned that he's the person who creates worlds within a single paragraph. So it's Robert E. Howard short stories. Another one, absolute benchmark, which actually Star Wars has been heavily influenced by, is Edgar Rice Burroughs' The Martial Chronicles, or the John Carter of Mars. Unfortunately, we had a very unsuccessful Disney effort to make a full feature film. You know, I didn't much like it, but that's besides the point. But anyway, it's a huge and epic planetary romance kind of genre, which I think every reader should read, and it holds up incredibly well today. You know, under that veiled, pulpy kind of like prose style, there's some amazing fantasy and hero motifs going on there. And women are surprisingly extremely well represented and empowered in books that were coming out a century ago. Another, just to tap into absolute benchmark, and I'll end up with three. I don't want to talk too much here. I have a wonderful guest. One of the books which taps into hardcore science fiction, it's those kind of novels which primarily deal with the issues of technology and how they will influence our society, is The Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. It's an absolute magnum opus of science fiction. It was highly underappreciated in press when it came out in the late 20s, I think 1929 it came out. But when I was reading it, it was so prophetic, and it talked about how how society will evolve beyond feelings and emotions, and everyone will be programmed to take a place in the society without their say-so, that it's becoming in reality. And I had to flip the novel every time just to make sure it's written in 1929. Anyway, those are my benchmarks. Those are my three books that represent my taste very well. What are some of your absolute must-read books?
My must-read books. I have quite a few of them, actually. But I would have to say my first love was probably the classical Greek myths. I read children's representations of classical Greek myths when I was very young, and I was always really taken by those. Even books like Robin Hood, loved Robin Hood. But then as I got older, I started reading the more R-rated version of the Greek myths. And what really interested me in those was the fact that the Greek and Roman gods, they were as flawed as any normal human being, and that's what really kind of drew me to them, is the fact that they were not represented as good, they were not represented as bad, they were just represented as anybody else would be, the potential to do good and bad. Then of course, I am a huge fan. I talk about it on the channel quite a bit too. The Song of Ice and Fire books. by George R. R. Martin. I think George R. R. Martin is. I actually like him better than Tolkien, to be honest, because
How
uh,
dare you?
yeah,
Right?
yeah,
That would be the common response.
right. And you know what? See, like for me, Tolkien. At times, I kind of get bored with Tolkien,
Yeah.
but with George R. R. Martin, I'm always on the edge of my seat, and I really feel that he really tries to employ that human aspect to his characters. The fact that this character's not good, this character's not bad, this character's just human, and you're going to see them evolve like a normal human being. But also, I think it was great that you mentioned Robert E. Howard. My first exposure to Conan, well, to him was actually Conan the Barbarian, the Marvel comics from the '70s, and also Kull the Conqueror. I think those were great stories, and I really see a lot of fantasy elements that come from him. Like even like reading Game of Thrones, that came out in the '90s, you can actually see that George R. Martin, he read a lot of this stuff when he was younger and he incorporated it into his stories. So and the Brave New World, I actually have that book. I haven't read it yet. I actually have it on my shelf right now. Yeah.
It's honestly, it was just mind-boggling how forward-thinking he was. Interesting that you mentioned Greek motif. It's also, I'm from Russia. I came to live here in New York when I was 14. It's also a huge part of Russian culture and the kids growing up with those myths, because two cultures are very much kind of like collide and share a lot in common. Let's get into it. Let's do the High Republic stuff, okay? Let's controverse, all that fun stuff, do the juicy things. Is High Republic woke propaganda?
I don't think so. That's the biggest criticism that you're hearing of the High Republic nowadays, is that it's woke propaganda. I don't think that including characters from diverse backgrounds or including more female characters necessarily makes the High Republic woke. I think it's ridiculous, and actually it was terrible because I was excited for the High Republic.
Yeah.
Because as I mentioned, I'm into that whole Knights of the Round Table trope, and I felt like I was really going to get to see the Jedi as they were meant to be. Okay, I was so excited, that these are the Jedi in their prime,
Right.
And then I was, I go on YouTube and watch videos about the High Republic, and there were just so many stupid videos of people just, criticizing the concept art, criticizing everything, like, Avar Chris looks really, really masculine here. And they try to make her gender neutral. I don't think they try to make her gender neutral at all. I mean, she's beautiful on the cover of Charles Soule's book,
I didn't even, honestly, it's the first time hearing it. As much as utter trash is out there and people talking out of blue and honestly unfounded things and just grasping at straws and just finding anything. Oh, did you hear about The Rock? It's The Rock. That's it. The entire franchise of that series is ruined because they have a cameo of a character who is a geek. He's basically Groot from Guardians of the Galaxy, who is like a comedic relief, and people call it he's the reason to ruin. I also don't think there's no hint whatsoever of woke propaganda, and you and I will talk about wokeism because I believe, unfortunately, the sequel films are not entirely safe from it, but even there, it's marginal. But anyway, moving on with it, the fans that respond to you and interact with you continuously on your channel, did they read those books or no?
I posted, to be honest, whenever I post a Star Wars book review, I have a few of them on the channel. Most of my viewers are more into comic books than Star Wars novels. Okay. But I haven't really gotten any, for the people that did watch my reviews on the books, I've never gotten any negative comments on it, really. Okay. It was just, but you could tell that if you just follow social media and the YouTube videos that are out there, like I remember there's one guy who legit was just bringing up a picture of some concept art and just laughing hysterically at every single picture.
Yeah.
And I understand, some fans, they still have a sour taste in their mouth from the sequel trilogy.
Hmm.
I said it many times. I wasn't a big fan of the sequel trilogy, but that's not preventing me from keeping an open mind,
Right.
um, and trying other things that Lucasfilm is releasing.
Yeah, I think it's their way of protesting. I don't think it's a very constructive or mature way of doing it. But
Right.
I'm not here to judge. I'm not here to tell people how to talk or how to behave. I just personally find it very amateur because believe it or not, social media influences other people. And like when you go to Disney Books on Facebook and their private page, and other people respond to this material, to this product, based on what a person says, and it gets like many likes and like, it's garbage. And unfortunately, somebody might be swayed just based on that, and it's irresponsible to do. And I think it's when I interviewed Kenneth Flint, who wrote the Heart of the Jedi, he was so humble about it. And as an author with over 1 million books in print, I was so humbled to interview him. I'm a nobody. I'm a small channel. But even he said, look, it's so arrogant that not only young people now have an access to their opinion, but just the very idea that people should value your opinion. It's quite arrogant. He's a man that comes from a different generation where people were taught to be respectful, especially respectful of like elderly and so forth. Anyway,
that's actually, if I could just cut in real quick,
go ahead,
I think it's
please.
also really interesting because there was a little bit of a situation when the Heart of the Jedi was put on Amazon. Because as soon as Heart of the Jedi was put on Amazon, and for those of you who are watching don't know about Heart of the Jedi, basically it was a bootlegged Legends book. It never made it to print, and then a fan just put it up on Amazon, right? And you started to see videos like, this is what fans want to see. Heart of the Jedi is destroying the High Republic on Amazon and sales and everything. And I was just like, well, no, it's the only reason why people are buying this is because they know it's eventually going to get taken down. So they're rushing to get their copies. And, then you have guys like Ben that buy 20 copies of Heart of the Jedi.
Yeah.
Right?
Hey, not going to make
Ben alone contributed to the sales of Heart of the Jedi.
Thank you for the ad. You already touched on this, but I just want to continue a little bit here before we talk the actual content of the books. Why do you feel there's such a strong reaction? And do you feel that some fans have legitimate criticism, specifically of the High Republic, or it's a knee-jerk reaction?
Overall, I really believe it is a knee-jerk reaction. Like I said earlier, I think that, people legitimately gave the sequel trilogy a chance, and then many people were disappointed by a lot of the tokenism. Now, I wouldn't say that the sequels are 100% tokenism. We discussed this, in our last podcast, but there definitely was that tokenism there that really didn't add anything of substance to the films. And they automatically assume now that just because this is new Star Wars content and you're starting to see, characters from diverse backgrounds, that it's automatically going to be just tokenism and a repeat of the sequel trilogy. I couldn't disagree more.
Okay.
It's because like I said, Charles Soule probably has written one of my favorite comic book runs in a while. And that was his run on Darth Vader. Stellar run, really imaginative, and just
he's awesome. I love his work.
I just love the way he does Star Wars, and you could really see that in Light of the Jedi. It's a thick book, but I was riveted by it. I absolutely loved it.
Just to add a few more of my own sense into it, and then we move on. To be an advocate for some people that I have personally interacted with that have read the High Republic, and they generally didn't feel special about it. It's like, oh, whatever, I fell asleep, it's boring, I didn't like it. They weren't extremely negative, but I feel that there is quite indeed a portion of the fandom that has issues with the High Republic and with sequels, and I think their frustration is illustrated because their voices are being shut off by the trolls. When one person goes in and starts bickering with Ryan Johnson or Justinia Ireland, one of the authors who writes books for the High Republic, She was being attacked by these 40-year-old men going to her Twitter and calling her names and telling her how to write her books. And eventually she responded with something, and I'm paraphrasing because I'm not going to go back and even read that tweet. I'm not about all this controversy. But she said something along the lines like, look, I don't need white men to tell me how to write my books. If you don't enjoy them, they're not for you. Don't buy them. And people just took it for a freaking spin. It was there for trending for several months as long. She's a racist. She's this. No, she's being a human being who is having an emotional response to constantly being pestered online, on Twitter. And Twitter is just an absolute garbage compactor of all these very extremely negative opinions. And I feel it's those people who take away the conversation from legitimate concerns. You know, some fans said, look, I'm not a huge fan of sequels. I don't like what they stand for. I don't like the fact that they weren't very well thought out. I don't like how they pulled, Palpatine like out of a magic trick box. You know, they didn't think through, didn't innovate in any meaningful way. Those are all legit critics. And I'm pretty sure they find something about the High Republic that they don't like. It's valid. I don't need everybody to agree with me. I don't need everybody who disagrees with me to say, well, no, you're wrong. You know, the only problem I have is one of the first things that I ask you is, have your fans read the books? My only criticism is, if you have not read the book, don't come to me for a discussion, because nothing is going to happen here. There's nothing constructive we can make where you say, well, I saw a synopsis. I saw 25.6 seconds on YouTube, and these books are garbage. I'm not reading them. No. Read it if you're a real fan, if you're an adult, and you know exactly what you're doing. You're spinning it, Read the book. Let's come to a round table, discuss. And if you still disagree, I'll respect it. I'll say, okay, person disagrees with me. That's the reason I have you here on this podcast. That's the reason I have Josh, and I intend to invite people who challenge me, who don't agree with me, I think,
that's a great point, because I'm not going to sit here and tell you that, I'm absolutely going to love everything that comes out of the High Republic Publishing Initiative, right?
Mm-hmm.
I loved Light of the Jedi. I actually did read Into the Dark by Claudia Gray. I actually didn't like it as much. There wasn't anything wrong with it. It's just, for me, Claudia Gray is one of the great Star Wars authors. And, my favorite book of hers is Master and Apprentice.
Mm-hmm.
So I was expecting a little bit more depth in that way. And I think for the High Republic, like Master and Apprentice was a very human story. We really got into the psychology of Qui-Gon Jinn, and very, very interesting dynamic between him and Obi-Wan Kenobi. But I didn't really, I was looking for more of that and Into the Dark, and I really didn't get it. And I think for the High Republic, I'm more interested in what's going on a macro scale as opposed to a micro scale. And that's why I really feel that I'm going to really enjoy the Rising Storm, because I think it's continuing. If I'm not mistaken, it's continuing what Charles Soule set up. Correct?
Yes. Into the Storm is the continuation of the adult series of novels. They obviously all tie into one another, but you don't have to read the young adult book that you mentioned, the Into the Dark. This is actually, you started kind of answering my next question, is which of the High Republic books have you read, and which one is your favorite?
So I haven't read the Justina Ireland book.
Test of Courage, right?
Yeah, Test of Courage, and that one is not even young adult. It's considered a children's, like a junior novel.
Yeah,
it's a junior novel. Okay, so I usually pick books based on my reading level. So I know you've read them all, but I kind of skipped over that one. I did read Light of the Jedi, and I did read Into the Dark. Blown away pretty much by Light of the Jedi, because it's really cool, and I really liked the villains in there. Because I mean, it's not really a spoiler to say, to talk a little bit about the Nile. But when I heard about the Nile, I was thinking, I'm like, okay, they're basically glorified space pirates, but there's really a lot more to it than that. And Charles Soule really kind of put aside my bias for that, and I actually think that they're going to be really cool villains. So, but like I said, Into the Dark, I wasn't as into it as Light of the Jedi. How about you?
I agree with you there. I think the Light of the Jedi, as excited as I was also optimistically cautious. because I want it to be good. And the light, I've been reading the expanded universe from Star Wars since '90s, since I started college, and they were my world. They got me through a lot of pressure in college and stuff like that. I hold very special memories from with the Bantam era, with Del Rey era. They all are special to me. But there was a lot of mediocrity. There were a lot of books that was like, whatever. They were truly, honestly, you could isolate which were the great ones. Anyway, when this High Republic came out, I said, please be good, because it gave me something that I was clamoring for since 2015. I knew there's going to be issue with the films because they introduced the legacy cast, and no matter who could have directed them, even Steven Spielberg himself, there would have been controversy because Star Wars fans are very, very opinionated. Anyway, with this book, I said, okay, it's a new chapter, it's a whole new setting, it's new Jedi. Please be interesting. That's all I'm asking. Don't cater to me. Don't give me something that I expected. And this was what it did. When I read all of the books, I read Light of the Jedi in 48 hours.
Wow.
I read the rest of the books in like literally days. And believe it or not, something very special happened where specifically the Light of the Jedi portrayed the Jedi in a way that I saw them when I was a kid in the 80s. It's unbelievable where in 2021,
Yes.
with modern sensibilities, with new sharp prose style where, the authors know when to crank up their stories and be very effective with dramatic scenes and with quiet moments and moments of tension. Vastly literature has improved over the years, at least in the prose department. But it also felt so vintage and so old school. Light of the Jedi just took me to a dream place. I became a 6-year-old again. I also really enjoyed Into the Dark, but I would agree that it's Claudia Gray perhaps weakest novel. And it's not saying much because it's still, in my book, pretty awesome. I believe I give it 3.5 out of 4 stars because it holds on the strengths of its amazing characters. But you could tell, like, even the most talented authors sometimes when they get oversaturated with work, they can't produce classic on demand. And it honestly, it relied a lot on strong characters, and that's what it delivered most. Not the most amazing story, but very interesting characters. So it looks like both you and I are kind of like coming at the Light of the Jedi as being our favorite book.
Correct.
All right, so let's talk about that. What's the most memorable aspect of that book in general?
Memorable. Most memorable aspect, believe it or not, is not going to be the same as most people. But my two favorite aspects of the book are definitely the Nile. I thought that, like I said, I was very surprised because space pirates are an ongoing theme in Star Wars. You see them in Thrawn books all the time, the space pirates. I actually just finished reading Ascendancy Chaos Rising, and I wasn't a fan of it. I don't know, but that's besides the point. But yeah, the Nile are not your run-of-the-mill space pirates, and it's very interesting what they set up with the Nile. I also find the dynamic between Avar Kriss and Elzarman very interesting. Really want to see what's going to go on there because it's I'm not into romance stories, but I think the dynamic between them is very interesting because they're both Jedi, and the Jedi are not supposed to have attachments, but yet Avar Kriss is she fantasizes about living out her retirement with Elzarman, and it's not flowery, it's not mushy or anything like that, but I'm really interested to see where that story goes next. But then even some of the new Jedi that they introduced there, we've never seen a Wookiee Jedi, but one of the Padawan, we have?
Yeah, in the Legends. Don't worry about it.
Okay, all right. Maybe. And again, I haven't read all the
Sorry,
Legends
I didn't
books,
mean to correct. Yeah.
No, that's fine. Please do, because I have not. I'm still on my Star Wars reading journey, right? But yeah, I thought the Wookiee Jedi was really interesting, and that whole scene where he's at a party and he can't communicate with anybody because no one speaks Shiriwook, right?
Yeah.
And just to see what's going through his thoughts is very interesting because you think like this is probably how Chewie feels all the time, right?
Yeah, I know.
And then they have the Trandoshan Jedi. Was it the Scar?
Skier, Master
There,
Skier.
Skier, yeah,
Hmm.
Skier.
Hmm.
And I thought that was really cool because Trandoshans are usually portrayed as villains, and as this like evil race of lizard people.
Hmm. Hmm.
But and I really thought it was cool that Master Yoda is mentioned, but he isn't really the focus.
Right.
You could tell he's already an illustrious Jedi by this point,
Hmm.
being 200 years younger, but he's not the focus of it.
Yeah,
So
it's not about him. I would say
right,
my most memorable thing about the book was how it was split into two parts, and the first part is obviously the Great Disaster, and obviously we're already getting into spoilers. And guys, if you haven't read the book, I highly urge you to go and read it. We're gonna get obviously into spoilers here because that's what the whole
right.
podcast is
That's why
about.
I refrained from talking a little bit
Yeah,
about the
yeah, yeah.
Great
No, no.
Disaster.
We have to like open the book now and get into it. My favorite aspect was, again, I'm going into each and every novel with an open mind and heart, and I expect it to surprise me and actually subvert my expectations.
Hmm.
As much as I love The Last Jedi, I think perhaps it was a little overdone in subverting expectations. Sometimes it's good to give fans a little bit of a reward, and that happy fairy tale ending is good. It gives you those happy feelings, and that's what you're supposed to feel walking away, unless you're dealing with something cerebral piece of artwork like Clockwork Orange, which is supposed to challenge you culturally, and it
Hmm.
also has a rightful place in our pop culture. But something like a escapist fantasy book like Star Wars, it can talk about serious themes, but I feel at the end it should reward you. And the
Right.
Last Jedi was it didn't have a lot of that. But with this book, it starts off with this extremely tense part, which I couldn't stop reading. Like, oh my God. I don't remember the last time I read it. Perhaps maybe the Legacy of the Force series of the New Jedi Order series have those moments too. Especially there's a famous scene with Chewbacca versus a crushing moon against the planet, and he's standing there in defiance. Fantastic, tense moment. And that's what the entire first part of this book felt to me.
Hmm.
So that was the most favorable aspect of the book. But when it comes to a specific scene, can you specifically choose a scene which kind of like is still stayed with you past, after you close the book and you like really enjoyed it a lot?
Yeah, the that you mentioned the Great Disaster. So we see this. I'm gonna have to jog my memory a bit, but you see this. The first chapter. Uh, we have the captain of this transport ship with
Hmm.
all.
Hmm.
I don't know if they're refugees, but they're just run of the mill people on this ship, and then this disaster happens, and now this ship explodes, and there are all these pieces that are flying through hyperspace. Then when they discover like these pieces that are flying through hyperspace can't just be simply destroyed because there are people there, I was like, okay, this is cool. This is really cool. I'm like,
Hmm.
this has not been done before.
Yeah.
I thought that was really imaginative, and you know, they really get into the science, well, the fictional science of hyperspace in this book,
Hmm.
which I thought was interesting and really kind of arcane. It's kind of difficult to understand because I'm not much of a physics buff,
Yeah.
but I thought that was really cool. And then the Nile, they have that. I forget who that person was, but that kind of can control the hyperspace a little bit.
Hmm.
The old lady that he's keeping.
Santeca, I believe. You can look her up in the link I gave you. She's there in the beginning, I think, of the link. She's one of the Santecas. There's two industrialists on Coruscant who are approached by the Jedi to try to resolve this problem scientifically. And while they provide some suggestion how the Nile may be navigating this hyperspace in a very non-conventional way, we also realize throughout the book that there is a woman who is related to them somehow who has the only key and understanding of how to navigate that space.
Right. Yeah, that was it. Like, and I
Hmm.
found like the leader of the Nile there, the how he's keeping her alive, like,
Yeah,
and kind of as a pet to kind of use
yeah.
for his own gain. I thought that was really
Hmm.
cool. There's just so much going on in this book that I thought was great, and I think the only component of this book that I think people are lashing out and saying it's woke garbage is the fact that those two industrialists on Coruscant, they're gay, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But I really didn't think that took away from it at all. Like, what's the big deal?
Yeah,
Like,
when I was reading, I'll be honest with you. Again, I'm a straight guy. And I'm reading this. I'm very, very open, and I think representation is important, and you can't escape it in modern day. It sifts through and it penetrates all the pop culture, and it needs to be talked about, but it needs to be done tastefully and tailored into the story. And I felt they just threw it out there because those two characters would have functioned well without it. But just because they're mentioned, I was like, okay, all right. The only thing that irked me about it is not the fact itself, but that it was just casually thrown in there, and you could feel the intent. It was just like to fill a quota and mark it off the checklist. Like, oh, by the way, we need some gay representation.
Right. I think that, and that's another reason why people hate it. I think Chuck Wendig's book, The Aftermath. There wasn't there.
I haven't read it.
I think there's. I haven't read it either, but I've read some synopses on it, and I think there is a lesbian character in there, and I think people just get really annoyed when these characters are just arbitrarily thrown in there for the whole representation thing. But at the same time, you think like you're really going to skip out on what's a really cool story, in my opinion, just because they throw in some representation there, and it's so minute. It's not like they play a huge role in the story. You know what I mean?
It's not even distracting. It's just the fact that it's like they sprinkle it there, and you as reader know what they're doing.
Right.
And once again, I'm not against it. I just want it to be done tastefully. For example, there's a prominent character, Dr. Afra. I'm not a huge fan of her. I still have to read all her books, but her interactions with Vader were kind of a little bit off-putting to me because she makes a fool out of him every time. I'm like, come on, this is Vader. That was my only gripe with her. But I felt that the way that they represented her, I think bisexuality. I think she goes both ways. She loves a woman at one point, and I think she also has certain feelings for a male. I'm not exactly sure, but I felt it was more tastefully done because they gave her prominence. She's a lead character in her own series, and that's the way she swings. She likes ladies over guys. Who cares? It's part of her nature. It's who she is, and that's what I want to see more of. If you're dealing with a transgender character, I made in my very, very first podcast, I made a comparison to a Star Trek show. In The Next Generation, there's a specific episode where number one, he goes to this planet and he deals with an alien species who are androgynous. They're neither male nor female. And in their planet, in their culture, it's a taboo to talk about a single gender. And she identifies herself as her, which they basically flip the whole transgender conversation on its head. It's, by the way, it takes place, that episode is filmed, I believe, in late 80s, early 90s. And it's so tastefully done, and it tackles the issue so maturely that you can't help it unless, you're a completely ignorant person. You pay attention, whether you like it or not. It's like, oh, they're telling us very serious stuff here. Interesting.
Right. How did you feel about? Have you read the Ahsoka novel?
Yes.
Yeah. How did you feel? Because I feel like it was kind of hinted at that Ahsoka might be either bisexual or homosexual. Her friend in that novel, I believe, definitely has an attraction to Ahsoka. You could see that. How did you feel about it in that?
To be honest with you, I don't remember that part. I read it just when the novel came out, and sometimes, I mean, with me, I've read so many Star Wars books that I constantly have to, before I do a review, I would go to Wikipedia and remind myself on certain scenes, certain characters, because it's all mushed in my hand. It's one giant myth. I don't specifically remember that part, but I don't care. If they tell me that Ahsoka is gay and that she's a lesbian and she likes other women and it's part of the plot, give it to me. I'll enjoy it. I like it. Okay, she's different. She's not like me. I have an open mind about things. For me, the only concern is as storyteller. I have a BA in animation. I was taught, in film school that when you tell a story, no matter what it is, every single scene, every single line should evolve, push the plot forward. If it doesn't do that, it's wasteful. It's extra fat. We don't need that.
Right. Absolutely.
Do you have? Oh, and I'm sorry, I forgot to mention my favorite scene. I asked you that already, have I? A specific scene of the
specific scenes. Yeah. Right.
My favorite scene was actually, which brought me to that childhood again. I was like, oh my god, this is so wonderful. When they are trying to unite all the Jedi to push those pieces of debris falling at supremely high velocity, and they're about to bombard this planet and destroy every living thing on the face of that planet, and they have to rally together, and it's Avar Kriss who uses her, what is basically called the Jedi Meld. I don't know if you read the original Thrawn trilogy. There's a character in there called Joruh Sebayoth, and then what he does is he's able to rally the Imperial troops, the people who are not force sensitive. He takes over, he possesses the entire fleet, and he controls all the troops, all the fighters, and all the generals in this force bubble that makes them more, that increases and boosts their morale and courage. And that's exactly what Avar Kriss does here. It's almost like a Jedi mind meld, but she describes the Force as this really beautiful and gentle experience, as music almost. And they're trying to do the good thing, and they're trying to save the innocent people. And I believe one of the Jedi loses concentration, and her ship crashes, and she's killed. She sacrifices her life to help others. And I said, wow, there's such a wonderful fantasy element of using this magic in service of all of this samurai thing to do, kind of like you sacrificing your life to help others.
I thought that was great too. And the thing I like about it is, I think that kind of really tears down that stereotype that Avar Kriss is a Mary Sue, right? Because if she really, like, that's quite a feat for a Jedi to accomplish.
Yeah.
But I really like the fact that she needed the other Jedi as well to be able to carry out the task, right? She wasn't just able to do it by herself, and pull a Star Destroyer from the sky, so to speak. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I really appreciated how that was done, and you're right. It was very beautifully written, that scene. I thought that was great.
And it's cool that you mentioned Elzarman, because I think what happens in modern society today, we are quickly jumping and dismantling things before we see the conclusion of them. For example, The Mandalorian season 1 and 2, both people were going back and forth every episode. People are doing the same thing with the Bad Batch show. People are already making up their mind about something before even a single season is over, because I think because we're all excited and we're a little bit impatient, we want to get to things quickly. But as far as Avar Kriss is concerned, I believe the authors, whether it's going to be Charles Soule or somebody else picks up the duties for that novel, they will take her in a very interesting territory with Elzarman, which I also absolutely love. I'm like, oh, so the Jedi were not celibate at one point. They were allowed to have relationships, and I'm pretty sure that emotional tension is going to lead her to very, very dark places. We see the same thing with Loden Greatstorm and his student, Bel Zadafar, which I want to move to my next question and ask you, who, in your opinion so far, is the most badass character in the entire High Republic books so far?
You know what? For me, Bel's great. I like what they did with Bel. It was his challenge in the book was to be able to stop himself from falling, right, or to fall from a high height and basically not die, right? And he eventually does accomplish that, which I thought was really cool. But there's something about Elzarman that I really like. He kind of reminds me, he's that Jedi he's more of a manicured version of Dooku's first Padawan. What's his name there?
Qui-Gon?
No, his first Padawan. The guy who was always dirty, and he was the. Hang on,
he was in the Master and Apprentice, correct?
Yes, and he's
That's
also
what you're talking about.
He's also in Dooku Jedi Lost. If you just bear with me for one.
Sure, go for it.
It's Rael Averross.
Yeah. I loved him. He's such a fun character.
And that's what Elzarman kind of reminded me of. Kind of like better taken care of version of Rael Averross. He's not necessarily going to go, the Jedi way, and they really kind of show that because he hadn't even been given his mastership. I think he had been, Avar Kriss was already a master, and he was still a Jedi Knight when for all intents and purposes he should have been, promoted to master. So that's why I like him, is because he's a little bit of a rule breaker, and I want to see what happens there, because it's my impression now that Jedi necessarily supposed to be celibate. They just can't form attachments. So they can do the deed, so to speak. They just can't get attached. And even I keep going back to Master and Apprentice because it's one of my favorite books. We get a scene in that book where Rael Averross is in bed with a woman, and and Qui-Gon kind of gives him a look, and he's like, who are you to talk, Qui-Gon, right? And then we get it's implied that Qui-Gon had a little bit of fun too, right? So
yeah. It's funny that you mentioned him. I'm glad you did. I love that character. I also thought Master and Apprentice is one of the greatest Star Wars books ever written, and to me, Elzarman represented almost two characters: Qui-Gon Jinn, who was a very maverick and who kind of challenged the status quo in Jedi Order, but also perhaps my favorite expanded universe character outside the films. It's what's his face? Oh my god, I was just had his name. I'm forgetting the name of my favorite character. Quinlan Vos.
Yeah,
Quinlan Vos is phenomenal, especially in the legend part where they go into his Kefar background and his psycho ability, where he touches a lightsaber or any object and he's able to get an impression of feelings of its former owner. He also one who challenged the status quo. But my favorite character would have to be, first of all, I also enjoyed Bal-Zadafar a lot because I thought he would be, again, it's just me being cautious. I was like, oh my God, are they going to throw an African-American looking character just to have that representation? No, he became such an exciting and interesting character to follow. It's so full of sprite and this boyish teenage kind of like defiance, but at the same time also in a very special relationship with his master, who almost sees him as his own father, and he wants to do good by the Jedi. He wants to do a right for himself. Very, very interesting young person. But to me, it has to be Loden
Greatstorm.
Blipping Greatstorm, dude. Just the name alone, when I saw like his character concept design, I'm like, oh, we're getting a Twi'lek Jedi. All right, let's see what's up here. And then we see him in this book. What's the most interesting thing about him is that, first of all, he's the total boss when it comes to the Force, the Jedi technique, like dispatching the Nihilists. Like, get the hell out of here. I'm the master right here. But at the same time, he doesn't have that lowbrow, serious Qui-Gon or Kenobi approach. He's like, he pokes fun at Bal-Zadafar. He has this very like dry and interesting humor, and it makes just his dynamics with everybody else around him so cool. And again, major spoilers for The Light of Jedi. I have a suspicion, which is going to lead us to the next question, but by the end of the Light of the Jedi, Loden Greatstorm is being captured by the Nihil. Because they have very, very special interest in him and the Jedi in general, which leaves a huge question. But I have a suspicion that part of him wanted to get caught deliberately. Because A, he's too gangster. That prison cell they put him in is not going to stop him. I'm sorry. He's a Jedi Master in his prime. And B, will be very interesting to see, once again, where his emotional journey will take him and how his young apprentice will respond to his master being captured. Is Bal-Zadafar going to be captured by the vices of the dark side and revenge? Which leads me into the next question. What's going on with Marchion Ro and the Sith? What's happening there?
Yeah, I was wondering that myself. Because this is 200 years before the events of the Phantom Menace, and I was thinking, like, are the Sith going to make an appearance? Because they exist at this time, right? There was a lineage from Darth Bane. Darth Bane is now canon. I think he was mentioned in canon books, right? So like that family tree. There are two Sith at this time. We don't know who they are, but nevertheless they exist. Are they going to get involved in any of this? Are they going to be in the shadows? Now I know, like, for Star Wars specifically, they're trying to get away from that whole, okay, here's another Jedi and Sith story. But I don't know. I never get tired of them. I love the whole Jedi and Sith struggle, and there's always like a fresh take on it. I would like to see, even if it's just a minor role, I would love to see the Sith kind of have some sort of role here.
What are your thoughts on Marchion Ro as the villain?
I think he's the
leader of the Nihil.
He's
the one that wears that mask with that little shape, and he has that very projects a knowledge of this navigation, that he's the only one who has it, but he's the one who has that Santeca lady, and he really is exploiting
Right.
her.
Yeah, I think he definitely he was not what I expected, but in a good way, right? He's not just your dumb thug, dumb pirate thug. He has a plan, right?
Yeah.
And he actually is a little bit of a manipulator, and he's going to get what he wants, right? Just because some of the Nile are thugs and they're ruthless, like they throw people out into the vacuum of space like nothing, right?
Yeah.
But I really thought he was interesting, and I'm really excited to see more of him in the next book.
Yeah, I think it's one of the biggest thing I could testify to as a fan of both Legends and canon. I think it's one of the hardest thing to do is introduce a new faction into Star Wars, because the Sith are so revered, and B, just in general in fiction, it's hard to do a villain because you don't want to have a cardboard just I am the bad guy. Even the Vader that we see in the original trilogy, very little of him. He's a character. He's developed. I feel that, first of all, there's one thing I missed when the High Republic Project Luminous was first introduced, and they showed the video reel of it, how they are making it. On the chalkboard, they have one ideas that they're tossing around, and one of them is the Sith Empire. I believe, please correct me if I'm wrong, at the time of the High Republic, the Sith as an entity in the galaxy is already extinct. They're nowhere to be heard from. There's no ideas. Nobody knows where they are. And I think this is where fans got a little bit impatient. Who are these, Nile? I don't want them giving me my Sith. Again, people expressed a little bit of impatience, but it feels like the High Republic has a plan. And there's no way in hell they're not going to introduce Sith. And with Mark and Ro, so far, it's the strongest piece of evidence that we have that why is he is so infatuated and interested in the Jedi abilities and the Jedi.
Right.
And which also lead me into the next topic we could talk about is I thought he was a very interesting character. He's not all-powerful, neither physically or in terms of how much command he has, because he still has to rely on his, I forget what they're called, storm leaders, the ones that are lead the 4 generals that he has. But he has to outsmart them and outwit them and tell them, like, no, you're still under my control, because I know how to navigate this subspace in a way that the Republic doesn't. So that was quite interesting. They accomplished it there. And also where he didn't quite demonstrate his personal viciousness. Obviously, he's part of the Nile, he's their leader, but we didn't see him firsthand go in and do something tremendously terrible. They're building something out there that will connect with the Sith and with the Jedi, where, like, oh, okay, so it's not just the Nile. The Nile is just the first big challenge that the Jedi have here. And with Mark and Ro, he's going to eventually dispose of his generals, and he's going to lead up into something else. So the next topic I wanted to talk with you about is, I don't know how many of the comic books you have read. You mentioned that you haven't read every single book, but are you familiar with the Drangir?
I'm sorry?
Are you familiar with the Drangir in the High Republic?
No.
Okay, so the Drangir are introduced in the comic aspect of the High Republic, and they are the sentient plants. You've read Into the Dark.
I've read Into the Dark. Oh, yes.
Into the Dark. I'm reminding you. In Into the Dark, when they land on this station, they find out that there's plants all over it. And by the end of the book, remember, they become sentient.
Yes.
And we don't quite clearly understand whether they were humans at some point, kind of like Pirates of the Caribbean's humans turned skeletons, and these sentient beings turned plants, or whether they were plants from the beginning. But they seem to have abilities that cancel out and influence Jedi in a very, very detrimental way. They're able to see these spores, and we see it happening with the Jedi skier, Master Skier, the Trandoshan. Right. In the comic books, he's also being offended by Drangir. I wanted to get your opinion on them as the new villain faction in Star Wars, and whether it's interesting or not, and what do you see the potential of them?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I definitely more interested in the Nile and what the Nile are doing, but I think it's a pretty original idea to have plants, but they're not simple plants like that are living killer plants. Like you mentioned, they were sentient. They were maybe people before, and now now they're plants, and they there's going to be a little bit of a dynamic there with the Jedi. I think that could be very interesting. Yeah.
Cool. Um, I feel that Dren Gear were done a little bit simplistically, to be honest with you.
Hmm.
I was very much looking forward to it, and I felt that the tension in the novel, the Into the Dark, when they land on the station and they're exploring this place, and we know that something is about to happen, but we don't know quite what it is. When the Drengir were finally revealed, and they're like these bipedal, they have like facial anthropomorphic kind of like appendages or something that communicates what they are. They were too literal for me. I wanted it to be kind of like almost a sentient life form of a plant life that is unlike bipeds, unlike like moving aliens, but is still able, almost like a sentient poison or spore, kind of like the Last of Us video game, where they're able to take over the Jedi, and now the Jedi are becoming like, oh my god, they're going crazy. And it would take much longer for the Jedi scientist or the Republic scientist to figure out what it is or how to combat it. Because in the comic books, they're already figuring out a way to do it. And when Master Skier, he loses his arm in Light of the Jedi, and he's dealing with that trauma in the comic books. And we understand that the Trandoshans, being the lizards that they are able to regrow their limbs. But what also happens in the comic book, he gets taken by the spore. At first, we think that he's turning to the dark side, but no, he actually is willingly submitted himself to the spore to understand it and to impart that knowledge to the Jedi. And now he's telling his apprentice, he's like, no. The way that we have to combat them is to make them understand that we're bad food. Don't eat us. So I felt it was too literal, too quickly done. I'm like you. I think I'm much more on that Nile train rather than a Drengir. So far, they're not living up to the hype for me personally.
Sure.
To start wrapping things up a little bit, and then if you also have any questions for me in regards to High Republic, I'll be more than happy to answer them. Do you feel, so we have the Old Republic in Star Wars Legends. We have all the Sith War that took place about 2.5 thousand years ago with the Bane's trilogy. We have the Sith Golden Age, which took place 5,000 years ago, and before. And this High Republic campaign takes place 232 years before the events of the films, but way after the Bane trilogy. Did you feel at any point when you were reading it that it tries to erase or cancel out the Old Republic, which a lot of Legends fans are being upset about?
No, I that's actually one thing that I was paying particular attention to, because as you know, I'm a huge fan of the Old Republic, and the Darth Bane trilogy, in my opinion, is probably among the best Star Wars books ever written.
Oh yeah,
love the Bane trilogy, and so far I haven't found anything in the new canon that is contradicting anything from the Old Republic or anything from the Bane era either. And I mean, again, I wasn't looking for specific, minute details, but on my first read of the of Light of the Jedi, I didn't really find anything that is contradicting the Old Republic or the Bane era at all. I don't know if you found anything, but
no, I'm also a big fan like you are. I love the Old Republic. I believe I got introduced to them first with the Knights of the Old Republic games when they just came out on the Xbox, part 1, part 2. And then the novels, Drew Karpyshyn jumped from BioWare and started doing the novels. I got into those. I enjoyed all of them. I read all 3 Bane books and Revan, but I haven't read the rest of the Old Republic novels. I have yet to read them. Plus, I read all the Dark Horse comic books. And when I was going into the High Republic, I kind of honestly, I was very happy that Disney announced in 2015, they said, look, we're going to shelf all the existing material as Legends, and we're going to start from scratch. And I've been reading for 20 plus years, and as invested as I was about it, I said, well, you know what? It's good that it's starting from fresh ideas, because there's so much stuff created over 40-year rich history of Legends. First of all, they always will be here for us to enjoy and read. They're not going anywhere. The Disney books and Lucasfilm just launched this new campaign where, I don't know if you've seen it, they're publishing these Legends books with amazingly beautiful new covers and just look wonderful, and everybody's picking them up. And when I was started reading the High Republic, I told myself, well, part of me is like, please don't rewrite the Old Republic. I like that stuff. I understand it's not canon anymore, but it seems like the MMO game, the Old Republic, is going so freaking strong, and they're constantly updating it with new expansion packs and things. I believe they're going to fully canonize it because it's inescapable. It's too much of an entity of its own for Disney to neglect. It's a moneymaker. People love that stuff. And a lot of my fans on my Facebook group and on the channel were asking, well, I kind of want to jump into High Republic, but does that overwrite the Old Republic? And I said, no, it takes place much later, and there was no reason that Bane and Malak and Revan could be reintroduced. As a matter of fact, as you mentioned, Bane has been already canonized in the Clone Wars series in season 6. He's actually revealed. He showed in full form. He's there.
Yeah,
Bane.
there we go.
And the reason that we talked a lot about the Light of the Jedi is at the end of the book, when there's a hint with the old ancient Sith war. That's the first thing I thought of. I'm like, oh, they're referencing the Old Republic. Whether it's the Sith War in reference to the Malak and Revan, or it's Bane's conquest, or is it the Mandalore the First who fought the Jedi in the Age of the Golden Sith? Golden Age of Sith. I'm like, oh my god, that's interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a thing. Like, I think Disney's being very cautious with what they're writing, and I think they're paying right now particular attention to not contradict what happened in the Old Republic. And honestly, right now, it doesn't look like they're kind of going into that territory at all, because I mean, 200 years before Battle of Yavin compared to 25,000, or sorry, not 25, 5,000 years before the Battle of Yavin, it's completely different. So for those of you that are watching, no, the High Republic's not going to contradict the Old Republic, because if we like try to relate it to our world, the High Republic's more like American Civil War era, and like Old Republic is like ancient Rome, ancient Egypt. So
very interesting comparison.
You're right. Like many years are in between the two, and yeah. So I could see why Disney did the whole Legends versus new canon. Like you said, there's just way too much. There would have been way too much for them. They would have had to hire people specifically to go through all of the Star Wars content that had been produced up until 2015. That would have been very cost prohibitive, right? After already spending $4 billion for the IP, right? So I understand what they're doing, but now there's been so many years now since the purchase of Star Wars that they've had time to kind of digest what's already been done, and I think now they're picking and choosing what they kind of want from Legends to remain canon and what they don't. And so far, it looks like Revan is canon. We saw that in the book. Like there was the Revan Legion in they reference in one of those encyclopedia books. Bane is canon, right? So there's really I think we're going to see, like you said, them canonizing the Old Republic for sure. And the MMO, great game. I still play it.
Yeah,
I love it.
It's awesome. How are we doing on time, Dante?
I mean,
I have two last questions for you.
Yeah, go for it.
What are your expectations for the High Republic in the future?
I really don't have any expectations. And I think that's one thing I'm actually learning in general as I get older of any IP that I like. I try not to expect anything because I want to keep an open mind, right? I don't want to be disappointed, right? So I don't create these expectations that will prevent me from enjoying any new content, because I've had that issue before, and after going back, I would look back and say, actually maybe it wasn't so bad. Maybe I shouldn't have had that expectation. So
yeah.
Do you have any expectations at all, or?
Yeah, my only expectation is don't cater to me. Surprise me. Give me something new.
Yeah.
Shock me. Do it in a way that is interesting. Do it in a way that is all-inclusive. I'm all up for all inclusivity. Do it in a way that speaks to a new society that we have. We have to take a look at ourselves. We have to take a look at people who are not like us and embrace everybody. And My only message is to Disney: if you want to represent an issue, be honest, be sincere. Don't do it on the surface. Don't exercise tokenism. Really delve into those issues, and that's what I want from Star Wars. You want to give me a gay character? By all means. You want to give me a character who is sexless, formless, or changes from a woman to man? I will be very respectful of it, as long as story comes first. Do not play around with Star Wars and make it something, a platform for your agendas. I never want to see that. And I think I speak for many people when people say, well, I don't want politics in Star Wars. This is escapist for me. This is something that I was watching with my dad or mom when they were alive, and it holds very special, almost religious-like meaning for me. And please don't tamper with it. Don't put politics. And when people say that, politics has always been a part of Star Wars. When Han Solo doesn't choose to participate with the rebels, but still joins them at the end, he has a change of heart. That's politics. That's personal politics. When Luke says, "Oh, I hate the Empire, but there's nothing I can do about it right now," that's politics. Mm-hmm. It's always been in Star Wars. The representation, the parallel with the Nazi Germany or Vietnam War, it's always been there. But I think, if I can speak for a second, assume that I'm speaking for a lot of us, the people who enjoy this stuff, is do it in a way that's meaningful and honors the legacy of Star Wars and George Lucas.
Right. I think people just really don't want social commentary, right? They don't want the social issues of our world to be incorporated in
I would say dominating
right.
the stories. Yeah.
Exactly. And I actually have a question for you, because
sure.
they're including a lot of sexual minorities, right? In these books. Can you ever see Star Wars? Because I mean, sex in Star Wars has always been, I wouldn't even say it's PG-13. It's very PG, yeah. Right? There's like little to no mention of anything really sexual in Star Wars. Mm-hmm. Do you think that Star Wars will ever be sexualized, like to the point where you're getting like more graphic type sex scenes in
that's
the
an
books?
Interesting question.
Like kind of more, because I mean, like, and I'm sure you agree, the amount of boobies that you see on television nowadays is a lot more than, like, say back in the 90s, right? Like, yeah. For nowadays, for like a show to make it, there have to be boobs in it, right? Yeah. So like,
sex sells.
Right? Could you see that in Star Wars now? Like happening?
I think the following. I think it's wise to maintain the general style of the next trilogy of films. You can be more playful in standalone films, like the Rogue One is vastly different from Solo. One is a spaghetti western, another tries to be a more grounded, serious, Saving Private Ryan type of war film. I believe there is absolutely room for everything. And so far, I enjoy the books the most about Star Wars. Obviously, the original trilogy is my go-to, right. But as far as books are concerned, and I think it's the ideal platform to explore those ideas. For example, for fans who might criticize me for saying that or challenge my point of view, I'll respond with this. When you read The New Jedi Order and Legacy of the Force, those are some of the grittiest, darkest stories that you find in Star Wars. They're on the borderline of like certain moments of almost like horror stories. Or what's the genre of horror science fiction that Warhammer 40K started? It slipped my mind. It has a specific genre. Can you Google it, please, real quick?
Well, like dark fantasy?
And not dark fantasy. It's very specific. Grindcore something.
What exactly do you want me to Google?
Warhammer 40K genre.
Okay, hang on.
And there's certainly room for that in Star Wars, and I wouldn't mind seeing. I don't think it needs it, honestly, because it's about story. But if you want to sexualize characters, you can do them in the book format. I don't necessarily think we must have it absolutely on screen. As far as sexual minorities go, that's a slightly different topic, because you're representing who the person is. You're not talking about their sexual exploits, right?
Right.
You're just saying that's who that person is. That's how they stand in the society. And I think it's fine. I personally don't even subscribe to a word as minority. I'm, for example, a Middle Eastern Jew. I'm a Persian Jew. I have a direct descent from Iran. My parents
Sure.
speak Farsi. Even when I was in Russia, I'm like a 10 darker than average Russian, so I was like ethnically different. I don't subscribe to the word minority. It's stupid. It's only one race, and it's the human race. I don't care what you look like, black, white, whether you're gay, lesbian, we're all human beings. We should all be on the same playing field, and that's how it should be in Star Wars. But when it comes to film, I think it's enough to have something like Anakin and Padme, where we see their love affair. You see the husband is able to get up from the bed. It's alluded to, but does it need like over sexualization? Not really.
Yeah, that was the one thing I always found interesting about Star Wars is that they never needed sex to make it
It's not
interesting.
that type of content.
Yeah, it's not. So I honestly, I personally wouldn't like to see that.
Yeah.
I don't care for it, and that's the other thing too. Like in terms of representing, say women or other, I know you don't like the word minority, but minorities, right? Uh, Star Wars has always done that.
Yeah.
I think they've always done that. Like even in like some of the Legends books, there are other strong female leads there.
Yeah.
There are people from diverse backgrounds that are in these books. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like I don't know why they had to go out of their way with certain things that they've been
One of my
putting out. But
favorite female characters in Legends books is Tahir Vela. She is part of this young Jedi Knight order, and she befriends young children of Luke and Leia and Han Solo, the Solo twins, Jaina and Jason. She becomes their friend, and she goes through such huge ordeal. And for me, it's very important how we relate to her by the strength of her character, not her Jedi skills or lightsaber techniques.
right,
It's not, she's not doing a male thing like I'm gonna be a badass. Everything that a male can do, I can do. No, it's the strength of the character, and the fact that she's a woman as well only amplifies that, and it makes you like, wow, there's really strong women in Star Wars. Same with Mara Jade. She's a total ass kicker, and she's also feminized, which I think is beautiful. I like to see that. I like to see her stronger side, and I like to see her gentler, kinder, motherly side, especially when she's pregnant with young Ben Skywalker, especially when she tries to reach out to Jason Solo and try to get what's going on inside of his heart when he's like in his really dark moment in his life. That's strong women, and they're not necessarily lightsaber wielding. And when they have lightsaber skills, again, it only amplifies and makes the character more interesting.
right, right. Yeah, I had one more question for you too. It was
Sure.
the how do you feel? Do you feel that in the past? Because I've read some interesting articles on this. Do you feel that Star Wars has been racist with respect to the representation of the fantasy races? Like, so for example, we have, Twi'leks are always kind of portrayed as prostitutes and like strippers and dancers, right? And Trandoshans are always evil. They're always hunting the Wookiees, right? Like, what do you think about that?
I think honestly, it's just people. There's an idea that we see what we want to see, we find what we want to find. I think it's people just basically reaching out and looking for all these things. Because look, as George Lucas was building this universe, you can only do so much in a span of the films, and even in a span of 40-year book history. There's only so much you can do. And if you isolate a certain race by what they're shown and not shown, then of course you can make a strong case for, okay, that's why like are portrayed. I just think it's based on material that is there versus what we don't have, because
Right.
there's also Twi'leks who are evil. We have an evil Jedi, Alemarar, who is a Jedi turned Sith apprentice or whatever in the later Jedi books, and she goes versus Luke and everybody else, and so my feelings is just like fans fantasizing and playing around with it. It's almost like a conversation in a local comic book store that I used to manage. One fan comes from DC side and another from Marvel side, and they decide who's stronger, Bruce Banner or Kent Clark. Who's stronger, who has more skills or the physical properties. I'm like, guys,
Right.
it's like you're going by the material that we have, and obviously you can build your case around it easily. That's all it is.
Right. Exactly.
You know.
Exactly.
Dante, it's been super, super fun. I want to part on this last question, and
Sure.
I really hope to see you here again, and we'll find a
Absolutely.
cool topic to talk about. What would be your message to the first time Star Wars readers who want to pick up the High Republic, but who are going by all the buzz that is happening out there in the internet verse?
My message would be not just with Star Wars, just with literature and media in general. Just keep an open mind. Form your own opinion. Don't form your opinions based on you know, negative propaganda that you're seeing online, or I find social media to be nowadays a platform for diffusing stupidity and diffusing negative press for a lot of different things, right? So I definitely think it's important to keep an open mind. You're not going to love every Star Wars book you read, okay? Trust me, I've read many Star Wars books. I like most of them, but there are some that I never liked.
Yeah.
So keep an open mind and form your own opinion. And
Awesome.
if someone, and there may be certain books that you like that other people don't, and there may be some books that you didn't like that other people do, and it's your opinion, right? So you don't have to fall in line with the masses.
Yeah. You said it beautifully. I have nothing else to add to like this general suggestion. I just want to, if I may, go into specifics as the like crazy Star Wars fanatic. I would say that somebody else's synopsis will not necessarily represent yours, because each and every one of us is unique. We come from different backgrounds. We have different worldview, and nobody's right or wrong. I'm not right because I have an opinion. That's all it is. And when you pick up a book, I would say specifically High Republic, give it a chance. Pick up a single book, see if you like it. If you don't, it's not at the end of the world. I feel it's wasteful and destructive, and it honestly accomplishes nothing when people exercise this troll thing and going to like different forums and different things. Like, ha ha ha, I got my quota for the day. I had a terrible day. I just have to go to the High Republic post from Disney Books and trash it real quick.
And ridicule fictional characters.
It is not real, guys. It's not a conversation. Right. Neither Disney nor serious Star Wars fans like me will pay attention to whatever you're saying. Why? Because I invest my time and money into it. And guess what? Like you said, not everything that I like, not even in Legends that people glorify. And then I go and I ask, how many of those Legends books have you read? Or 10? Well, I'm sorry to wave my stick around here. I read 200 of them. And not all of them are great. I am reading right now, for example, The Outbound Flight by the great Timothy Zahn. It is not what I expected. I'm not enjoying as much as I thought I would, but not because it's bad. My opinion, what I think of this book and what it is, are two different entities. I may not like it for the ideas that it represents or how it decides to handle its story and characters, but is it competently written, objectively speaking? I think it is. And that is also an opinion. It's not a matter of fact. And my message to fans is, whether you go to Legends or canon, the entire reason I started my channel is to say, look, guys, it's all fiction. Have fun. Stop looking at it with such low brow eye and treat it like it's your religion. Have fun. Experiment. Pick up a book here. Ask a friend. Ask a real fan who is like Dante, who may be not as much as into it as I am, but read quite a few of books, or somebody like me who is like a zealot of Star Wars EU, and we'll give you our honest 2 cents. And I will never cater to anyone, not even Disney's opinion. If they start sending me free books for review copies, you best believe I'm going to give my 2 cents for it. Because when I interviewed Kenneth Flint, and I was kind of like partial. I was like, oh, damn, this a writer came and he gave me his interview. Who am I? Now it's time to review his book. Am I going to be partial because he was so pleasant and nice to talk to? No, I gave people my honest opinion. I thought it was a good book. It didn't reinvent the wheel. It wasn't anything super special, but I genuinely liked it. And that's who I am as a fan.
I watched your review on that. I actually appreciated that you actually gave your honest opinion, because I also watched your interview with Kenneth Flint. And
thank you.
I was like, that's good that Ben is actually giving his honest opinion. He's not just saying like, yeah, 5 stars because Kenneth Flint's a nice guy, and he gave me his time to come on my show. Like
I believe if that book was professionally edited and was given a little bit more time to cook, it would have been something great. Actually, not good.
Yeah,
but it was good.
Yeah,
Dante. Before we part, please remind everybody about your channel, what you do, and why people should go and check you out.
come check us out at Geekery with Dante D. We talk about comic books and other geek stuff. So we're always talking about Marvel. We're talking about DC. We're talking about Star Wars, and always about comic book collecting. Pretty much, if it's geeky, we talk about it on the channel. So we'd love to see you and join some of our conversations on our channel as well.
Thank you so much, Dante. I really appreciate him for always speaking honestly and, you know, giving a very, very informed opinion. And I was laughing throughout your entire video of book smells. Like you have such you have such a sense of humor. Like I envy it. Like I wish I could conjure up like a video like this on demand and like be so informative, but at the same time whimsical and funny. I'm like, oh man, like I'm a genuine fan of yours, man.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
All right, guys. We'll see you next time on our podcast to talk about all the interesting stuff, Star Wars. And I will make sure I'll invite fans who don't necessarily agree with me. Bye. See you later.
Take care.